Good to meet you. Thanks for coming. I can't claim to be an expert on Asperger's, and I'm not sure that there's anyone that can claim being some sort of expert on a disorder that's on a spectrum. That means that it's broad and enormous. It's governed by personality, and often it's governed as much by what people don't know as what they do know. What I want to talk about first is to hold students accountable for their behavior. This is totally coming from me. I didn't read this in an article or anything, but it seems to me we're asking people with no legs to walk when we talk about Asperger's and putting people out in a social environment that they just can't comprehend. We wouldn't do that to someone who couldn't walk. But we do ask it of students with Asperger's. The authority that lets us do that, I think, is the fact that we actually meet with students. There are offices that don't do that. I don't think just an access model, purely access model, I don't think that would give us the authority to do that. I don't think so. But in the relationship that we build with students, and I suspect I'll use that word continually because I don't think there's any other way to do business with students with Asperger's. Having said that, let me tell you, I don't usually use this word often because I know we're in higher ed, and it has religious connotations, but there's a moral element to working with people with disabilities. There is. What do we require of them? What do we ask of them? I think about that when I work with students with Asperger's. We've had some success on the behavior realm, and I'm convinced that the reason we do that is because we work hard not to be mealy-mouthed Southerners. To ignore that they smell bad, to ignore that they're dirty, there's something a little bit wrong with that. I might even say weird. There's just something weird about that. That's just not something that should be ignored, I don't think. So within the context of the relationship, that's the place where you get the authority to say those things and to hold people accountable for their behavior. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. Does that make sense? To female students while in the library. Joe generally keeps weekly appointments in the ODS, that's the Office of Disability Services, that's what we call it. And you have a continuing conversation with Joe regarding social interactions and verbal exchanges. What action should be taken or what action could be taken? What do you think? Just give them that information. Any ideas? I'm going to extend the scenario a little bit. Joe goes to the library for social interaction and for study. Okay, he's a new student, and he and I have met numerous times, weekly. We chat all the time. He's concerned about how he talks to other people. He wants to make friends, and so we talk about ways that he can do that. We literally write on the board. We script some of the things that he might consider saying. Okay. Right in the middle of our library, there are computers, with all sorts of databases on them. And since that's kind of the central place for traffic, Joe likes to sit there. Students pass by, he speaks to them, and of course they're thinking, who's this person that's speaking to me, this stranger, right? And a lot of them are female students, and a lot of them are 17 or 18 years old, brand new freshmen, never been away from home, okay? So he's continually getting in trouble for this, okay? Parents call him. So he comes in my office and we sit down and we talk, and I say, what are you saying? Davis, I'm not saying anything. I just speak to them. I say hello and we have normal conversation. And I say, well, what is normal conversation? I kid you not, we had this conversation continuously over 3 months before I pegged one thing that he was doing, and it was such a liability. I mean, I just got it automatically, but it wasn't until I asked it point blank. I said, go to the board and write down for me what you're saying. He says, well, I meet people, and I ask them where they're from, and which is typical. I mean, we all do that, He goes to the board, and what he writes on the board is, hi, how are you? My name is Joe. What's your name? Safe so far. Where do you live? Which is a whole different thing. Not where are you from, but where do you live, to a complete stranger who's 18 years old, never been away from home. Well, he was already under sanctions for the library. He was giving library hours, okay? Is there a problem with that? That he was sanctioned from the library? Who has a problem with that?
He was sanctioned from the library?
He could only use it during specific hours. He had to call the dean's office and say, I'm going to the library to work now. This is what I'm going to be. Is there a problem?
If there was no intervention about what really happened.
The intervention was with me. We had been intervening. This was over the course of 6 months, okay? And he was subsequently, it continued. It was behavior that just continued on and on and on. He changed from saying, where do you live, to, something less, something more agreeable, okay? But wrapping his head around those nuances, that's the very thing he could not do. He just could not do that. But still we had to put the weight on him for understanding the necessity for scripting himself, or for being quiet, or for asking, okay? There is no feature of Asperger's that makes people talk. There is no feature of Asperger's that makes them do that. What it does do is this: it prevents them from knowing what is acceptable. We have to hold them accountable for that. There's no way around it. So how do we do that? I'm going to give you this in just a minute, but I want to talk about how we lay the groundwork, because the last time we hired an assistant director, she was shadowing me a little bit. That's what I think gives us all the authority to hold students somehow accountable for their behavior. They have to. So many things come into play with that. I knew as I was talking to Joe in the first scenario, Joe was from a foreign country. He was on a student visa. He had dark hair and olive. People don't look at him as just some Joe sitting in the library. They walk in and they see someone treating them strangely, asking strange questions, and whether we like it or not, they think, Muslim. People think those things. They do. Our goal was to coach him with Asperger's. And I worked 3 years to articulate this. They cannot articulate what they're missing, and we can't articulate what we have. We do it so naturally that we can't articulate it. So to explain it to somebody else is almost impossible. How do you explain the nuances between where are you from and where do you live to someone who has no experience with that? But Davis, I knew what my intentions were. I know what your intentions are. I do know. And that's the hard part of this job, I think, of just working. We do know what their intentions are. They're not bad intentions. They want what all of us want. They want to speak to people. They want to be accepted. They want to move in that social sphere. And they get to. But there are limits. We impose the limits on ourselves. We ask them to do that. That relationship that we have with them is what allows us to, I think. I've had to work hard on that, because I have to tell you, it doesn't always feel good. But I'm convinced it's the right thing to do.
Is the distinction, Davis, between when a child goes off to public school for the first time and that they learn what they're told?
They don't know. They don't know when it's appropriate to say, hey, let's you and I go out. Or when the first kiss is appropriate. They have no social distinctions to tell them when that's appropriate. Those are the things we miss, and those are the things that lead to behaviors, that we can't tolerate on campus often. And they're hard to wrap your head around, because we can't articulate how we do it and why, And then the other thing we battle, and this is what just